Gentlemen, let me make something clear. Masculine energy isn't loud. It doesn't beg, plead, or chase. It withdraws. It vanishes. In the world of dark psychology, power isn't taken. It's created in silence. Let's break down why masculine men don't chase. They disappear. When a man chooses to disappear instead of chasing, he activates one of the most powerful psychological triggers known in human interaction: tension through absence. Most people don't realize just how deeply uncertainty affects the mind. The brain is wired to seek closure, to find patterns, to predict outcomes. But when you disrupt that by removing yourself from someone's life without explanation or chase, you create a vacuum, an open loop that the other person becomes obsessed with closing. This is not about manipulation, but about understanding the deep wiring of human psychology. When you're always present, always available, always responding instantly, there's no mystery, no curiosity, no emotional tension. You become a background noise, something expected, predictable, and easy to overlook. But the moment you vanish, without drama, without warning, without an emotional outburst, you become a question mark in someone else's mind, a gap they feel compelled to fill. They start to replay conversations. They analyze your last message. They wonder what changed, why you left, and most importantly, whether they caused it. And here's where it gets even more powerful. In dark psychology, this tactic is linked to what's called intermittent reinforcement, a behavioral pattern that makes people more addicted to inconsistent rewards than constant ones. When you disappear, you remove the reward they were getting from your presence, your attention, your validation, your emotional availability. That sudden drop shocks the system. It creates a withdrawal effect. The other person begins to crave your energy more, not less. Your absence becomes louder than your words ever could be. In this silence, people are forced to confront their own actions. They start questioning how they treated you, where they went wrong, and what they missed. This kind of psychological tension is far more effective than any argument, emotional plea, or over-explanation. The person who disappears maintains control, not by force, but by letting the other person sit in their own discomfort. You become the unresolved story in their mind, the one that doesn't have a conclusion. It's important to note that disappearing doesn't mean ghosting with the intention of manipulation or revenge. It means recognizing that your energy is too valuable to be spent proving your worth to someone who doesn't already see it. Instead of begging to be understood, you retreat into your own space, your own mission, your own life. And in doing so, you regain the psychological upper hand, not through control, but through composure. This approach taps into a deep primal response. In relationships, whoever is most emotionally composed controls the pace and direction of the interaction. When you chase, you give up that composure. You give up your frame. But when you disappear, you force the other person to recalibrate, to rethink, to reconsider. You no longer revolve around them. They start to revolve around the memory of you. And the longer your absence is felt, the more powerful the effect. Time amplifies mystery. It turns a moment into a memory, and a memory into a fixation. You're no longer just a person who left. You become a symbol of what they lost, what they couldn't control, what they now want back. That's the silent power of disappearing. Chasing is a behavior that fundamentally contradicts the essence of masculinity. At its core, masculine energy is about direction, purpose, and self-sufficiency. It's rooted in strength and independence, traits that cannot be effectively cultivated. if a man is constantly pursuing external validation or approval. When a man chases, he places his emotional well-being in the hands of someone else, essentially surrendering his power and value to that other person. This is not a trait of true masculinity. It's a characteristic more often seen in behaviors tied to femininity, particularly the energy of longing, waiting, and hoping for something that may or may not come. Masculine energy is about asterisk being asterisk, not asterisk pleading asterisk. A man who chases is not embodying his true nature. He's reacting from a place of neediness, fear of rejection, and insecurity. This behavior undermines his own self-worth, signaling to others that he's willing to sacrifice his dignity and self-respect to gain attention or affection. When a man's worth is dependent on someone else's approval, he loses his autonomy and becomes emotionally tethered to the whims of another person. This is not a position of power. In fact, it's the opposite. He becomes a slave to his own desires and the validation of others. True masculinity is about being steady, reliable, and emotionally grounded. It's about knowing who you are, where you stand, and what you bring to the table. A masculine man does not need to chase because he is confident in his value. He knows that the right people will recognize that value and will come to him when they are ready. There is no need to beg, plead, or manipulate to get attention or affection. The pursuit of anything, whether it's validation, affection, or connection, is beneath the masculine spirit. Instead, masculine men focus on living with integrity and purpose. They are not desperate to have their worth acknowledged because they know their worth doesn't fluctuate based on someone else's recognition. In many ways, chasing stems from a misunderstanding of value. People often chase because they believe that by winning someone's approval, they somehow elevate their own sense of importance. However, in the eyes of masculine energy, chasing is counterproductive. It sends the message that you're not already whole, that you need someone else to complete you. Masculine men are complete in themselves. They don't chase because they already know they are enough. The idea of pursuing something or someone to feel more valuable is foreign to them. Their value doesn't come from external sources. It is intrinsic. Masculine energy also prioritizes action over reaction. Chasing is reactive. It's based on the idea that something external is dictating your emotional state. Masculine men, however, control their own emotional landscape. They decide when and how to invest their time, attention, and energy. They are not swayed by fleeting emotions or the desire to please others. Instead, they focus on their own goals and aspirations, knowing that their presence and energy will naturally attract those who are aligned with their purpose. They don't run after validation. They attract it through the strength of their own character and achievements. Chasing is also a sign of attachment, and attachment is a sign of weakness in the masculine context. The more attached you are to a person, outcome, or situation, the more you tie your emotional well-being to something external, making you vulnerable to disappointment, frustration, and heartbreak. A masculine man knows that attachment diminishes his freedom and autonomy. He values his independence too much to let someone else have that level of influence over him. He doesn't tie his happiness to another person's actions. Instead, he controls his own happiness, and if someone aligns with that, then great. If not, he moves on. There's no need to chase. In the end, chasing is a behavior that signifies a lack of control. The more a man chases, the less control he has over himself and his life. True masculinity comes from being in a position where you don't have to chase anything or anyone because your value is clear, your goals are set, and your path is defined. You are not reacting to external forces, but instead you are the one setting the direction. You lead your own life. You don't follow or beg for attention. Masculine men don't chase. They stand firm, remain focused on their purpose, and let the world respond to them. Detachment is a concept that many people misunderstand, especially in the context of relationships. Detaching doesn't mean emotionally withdrawing, being cold, or shutting yourself off from those around you. It's not about abandoning connection or acting indifferent. Rather, detachment, especially in a masculine sense, is about freedom. It's about knowing who you are, understanding your own worth, and maintaining emotional sovereignty, regardless of external circumstances. In essence, detachment is the ability to stand firm in your sense of self without being swayed by the fluctuating moods, desires, or actions of others. A man who practices detachment doesn't allow others to dictate how he feels. He is not controlled by the approval or disapproval of others, nor does he tie his self-worth to how much attention he receives from those around him. This emotional independence is crucial for a masculine man because it prevents him from becoming overly dependent on others for validation or happiness. Instead of being tethered to the whims of another person's emotions, he remains solid in his own emotional landscape. He remains unfazed, knowing that his value is inherent and doesn't fluctuate based on anyone else's response. This is a form of power, emotional power. The practice of detachment comes with a deep understanding that you are responsible for your own emotions, actions, and reactions. You do not rely on external validation for your sense of worth. This is especially important in relationships. When a man is emotionally detached, he does not cling to someone or a situation out of fear of losing them. He understands that true connection comes from mutual respect and alignment, not from desperation or emotional neediness. His own happiness and well-being are not dependent on another person's approval, actions, or behavior. This allows him to maintain a sense of inner peace, even in the face of potential conflict or emotional turbulence. When a man detaches, he also sets healthy boundaries, which are key to maintaining his sense of self and his personal power. Detachment does not mean withdrawing entirely or becoming emotionally unavailable. Rather, it means being clear about what you will and won't tolerate, and not allowing others to overstep those boundaries. A detached man understands that while he may care deeply for someone, he will not compromise his integrity, his values, or his personal space to please them. This creates a dynamic where he is in control of his own life, not reactive to the moods or desires of others. Detachment also allows a man to navigate relationships with a greater sense of clarity. When you're emotionally entangled or too attached, your vision becomes clouded by your emotions. You begin to act from a place of fear, insecurity, or desperation. But when you detach, you can see things as they truly are. You are not swayed by the highs and lows of the relationship. Instead, you can evaluate the situation from a calm, objective perspective, allowing you to make decisions that are in your best interest and aligned with your purpose. This clarity gives you the strength to walk away from situations that are not serving you, even if there is an emotional pull to stay. Detachment is also about recognizing your own worth. A detached man knows that he does not need to chase, beg, or compromise his integrity to maintain a connection. He understands that if a relationship is meant to be, it will be built on mutual respect and alignment, not on emotional manipulation or dependence. He does not need someone else to complete him. He is already complete as he is. Detachment is the embodiment of self-sufficiency. It is the realization that you don't need another person to feel whole or validated. Your value is not contingent on whether or not someone loves you, approves of you, or stays in your life. You are enough as you are, and this realization gives you the strength to detach when needed, to walk away when necessary, and to maintain your emotional integrity in the process. In practice, detachment also means stepping away from unhealthy dynamics. When you are detached, you are able to observe and recognize when a relationship becomes toxic or one-sided. A man who is emotionally detached does not waste his time chasing someone who is not reciprocating his energy or respect. He knows when to let go and preserve his own well-being. He is not afraid of being alone because he is not emotionally dependent on others for his sense of worth or happiness. He understands that some people may not be right for him, and that's perfectly fine. He is not willing to sacrifice his own happiness or values just to keep someone around. Detachment is not about running away from emotions or avoiding difficult conversations. It's about understanding that you are not controlled by them. You experience emotions, but they do not define you. You can feel anger, sadness, or frustration, but you don't let those feelings dictate your actions or your state of being. You recognize them, process them, and move forward without letting them dictate your behavior or choices. This level of emotional maturity is key to maintaining your power and staying grounded in your masculine energy. Ultimately, detachment allows a man to remain in control of his own life, his emotions, and his decisions. It's not about being distant or aloof, it's about having the emotional intelligence to know when to invest energy and when to protect it. It's about maintaining your own emotional sovereignty, refusing to let anyone or anything compromise your sense of self. The more you detach, the more you empower yourself to make clear, rational decisions that align with your own purpose, goals, and values. And the more you practice detachment, the more you become the kind of man who can navigate the complexities of relationships and life with unwavering confidence and clarity. Attention, especially in today's world, is one of the most valuable currencies. Yet, too many people spend it carelessly, handing it out to anyone or anything that demands it, without thinking about its true worth. Hey, Val. You men, especially those operating from a place of masculine energy, understand the power of their attention and the importance of protecting it. When you give attention freely, you devalue it. The more you give, the less it means, and ultimately, it becomes something that people expect and take for granted. It's a simple concept. When something is always available, it loses its allure. But when it's scarce, it becomes a prize. Attention, then, is not something to be spent recklessly. It's something that should be reserved for those who truly earn it, who can appreciate its value. The act of giving attention, particularly to people who haven't earned it or who don't reciprocate it, is a sign of desperation. It's a subconscious attempt to gain validation, approval, or affection. It comes from a place of need, when you are seeking something outside yourself to fill a gap or void. In contrast, masculine energy doesn't chase attention. Instead, it commands attention by being intentional with it. Hi, Val. You men aren't constantly chasing external sources of validation. They live their lives with purpose, and that purpose naturally draws attention to them. They aren't focused on seeking out admiration, approval, or affection. Instead, they focus on their own mission and goals. knowing that if they remain true to themselves and their path, those who resonate with their energy will naturally be drawn to them. The problem with constantly giving away your attention, particularly in relationships, is that it creates an imbalance. When you're always available, always responsive, and always trying to please others, you establish a dynamic where the other person takes your attention for granted. It becomes expected, and without the emotional tension of wanting something they can't have, there's no real investment or desire. The other person may not consciously realize this, but the dynamic becomes one where they no longer have to work for your attention, and over time, this erodes the quality of the connection. They stop valuing it because it's always there, and once something is always available, it stops being perceived as important. On the other hand, when you're selective about where and to whom you give your attention, it creates a sense of mystery and value. Your attention becomes something people have to earn. This doesn't mean playing games or pretending to be unavailable for the sake of manipulation. Rather, it's about recognizing your worth and acting from a place of self-respect. It's about understanding that your time and energy are finite and therefore should be invested wisely. By choosing carefully where to direct your attention, you maintain your value and ensure that those who receive it truly appreciate it and respect it. This doesn't just apply to romantic relationships, but to all relationships and interactions in your life. The more freely you give away your attention, the more you invite dependency from others. When people know they can count on you to be constantly present, always responding, and always available, they stop putting in the effort themselves. The dynamic shifts from mutual respect to one-sided effort. Masculine energy doesn't cater to neediness. It thrives in a dynamic of mutual respect and effort. When you give too much of yourself without any reciprocation, you diminish the power of your attention, and you also diminish your own sense of self-worth. Giving attention freely and without thought leads to emotional burnout, frustration, and an overall lack of fulfillment. This is especially true in relationships, where one partner may end up feeling drained, unappreciated, and taken for granted. At the heart of this concept lies the understanding that attention is a reflection of your priorities. What you focus on tells the world what matters most to you. A man who understands the value of his attention knows that where he directs it is a direct reflection of his priorities and values. He does not waste time chasing after people or situations that do not align with his purpose. His attention is a resource he uses to fuel his growth, to engage with people who add value to his life, and to foster connections that are meaningful and mutually beneficial. The more you guard your attention, the more it becomes an investment in your future, your well-being, and your goals. When you stop giving away your attention to people who don't deserve it, you shift the energy dynamic. Instead of being a reactive force, constantly responding to others' demands for your time and energy, you become proactive in where you place your focus. You choose who and what to engage with, and that gives you the power to cultivate more meaningful connections, both personally and professionally. The people who are truly aligned with you, who value you for who you are and what you bring, will respect your time and attention. They will appreciate the fact that you don't give it out freely and will invest in the relationship just as you do. This creates a higher quality of connection, one that's built on mutual respect, value, and purpose. Hi, Val. You men understand that attention is not just about the amount of time or energy spent with someone. It's about the quality of that energy. When you give your attention to someone, you give them a piece of your energy, your focus, and your presence. The more freely you give that away, the less it means. When you hold back your attention, when you make people work for it, it becomes more meaningful. It has substance, it has power, and the people who receive it will treat it with the respect and appreciation it deserves. By being selective about where you place your focus, you protect your own energy and ensure that you are only investing in the relationships, situations, and goals that align with your true purpose. You become a man of high value because you recognize the power of your attention and use it to cultivate the life you want. When you choose to disappear rather than chase, you trigger a complex psychological process in others, especially in relationships. This isn't about running away or being cowardly. It's about creating space and allowing others to process the absence you leave. When you disappear, whether physically, emotionally, or even mentally, you force the other person into a position where they must confront the reality of your absence. This absence doesn't only cause them to feel a lack of your presence, but it forces them to begin reevaluating the relationship, their own behavior, and the dynamic you shared. This isn't a manipulation tactic, but rather a natural result of not being constantly available, not always giving in to emotional needs, and not chasing the approval or validation of others. The disappearance creates a void. It's the emotional equivalent of a door closing, and when one door closes, others start to open. People rarely miss what is constantly available to them. The familiarity of constant attention, constant availability, and constant reassurance often dulls their sense of appreciation for it. But when you take a step back, when you pull away, the absence speaks volumes. It's almost like you've taken a piece of the relationship with you, leaving them to wonder, what happened? Where did you go? Why are you suddenly distant? This uncertainty, the not knowing, creates a psychological tension in the other person, and uncertainty, as much as it may be uncomfortable, is a powerful emotion that often drives people to take action, to fix what's broken, or to return to what's been lost. As you disappear, the other person is left with their own thoughts, their own feelings, and a series of questions they are now compelled to answer. They begin to analyze the relationship, their behavior, and most importantly, their feelings towards you. They begin to question what went wrong, and in that process, they often come to the conclusion that they may have taken you for granted. This is where the power of disappearing truly lies. When you're no longer present, they no longer have the luxury of assuming your availability. You become something they need to chase, something they want to understand, something that stirs emotion within them. And in that stirring, they are compelled to either re-engage with you or face the reality of their own mistakes and emotional neglect. The disappearance isn't about creating drama or leaving the other person in a state of confusion for malicious purposes. It's about allowing the other person to realize your value. If you're constantly chasing someone, constantly giving them attention, and constantly trying to prove your worth, you inadvertently create a scenario where they no longer appreciate your presence. It becomes easy for them to take you for granted because they know that you'll always be there, waiting for them, no matter what. But when you step back, when you disappear without warning or explanation, you shift the dynamic. You stop being the one who's always there for them, and you become the one they have to work for, the one they have to reach out to, the one they now have to prove themselves to. This forces them to recognize your value, not just in terms of what you give them, but in terms of who you are as a person. And this realization can spark a shift in how they view you and how they view the relationship as a whole. The concept of disappearing also taps into a deeper, primal aspect of human behavior, the fear of loss. People are often not aware of how much they value something until it's no longer there. This principle is rooted in scarcity psychology. The less accessible something is, the more desirable it becomes. When you disappear, you become scarce. Your presence is no longer a given. It's something that has to be earned or fought for. This scarcity increases your value in the eyes of the other person. They no longer take you for granted because you are no longer readily available to them. Your absence creates a longing, a desire, and in many cases, a fear of losing you completely. And this fear of loss, whether acknowledged or not, is a powerful motivator that drives people to take action, to reach out, and to reconsider their previous behaviors. Moreover, disappearing shifts the emotional power dynamic. When you stop chasing, you stop seeking validation, and when you stop seeking validation, you stop giving the other person the power to make you feel important or loved. In a way, this withdrawal from the chase turns the emotional tables. You no longer seek their approval, their attention, or their affection. You are no longer at the mercy of their moods or responses. You take back control over your emotional state, and that is one of the most powerful things a person can do. The disappearance allows you to maintain your own sense of dignity and self-worth, regardless of whether or not the other person reciprocates. It's a declaration that you do not need anyone's validation to be complete. You are already whole, and if they can't see that, then they have lost the privilege of your attention. In addition to triggering longing and reevaluation, disappearing also allows you to protect your peace. Constant chasing, constant effort, and constant emotional investment can be draining. It can leave you feeling unappreciated and emotionally depleted. By disappearing, you reclaim your emotional energy. You regain your sense of peace and self-respect, which allows you to continue on your own path without being derailed by someone else's actions or inactions. This emotional space gives you the freedom to focus on your own goals, growth, and happiness. It's not about punishing the other person or playing mind games. It's about protecting your energy and ensuring that you are not continually sacrificing your peace for someone who may not value it. Ultimately, the power of disappearance lies in the psychological effect it has on the other person. You become an enigma, something they can't easily figure out or control. And this mystery, this sense of not knowing, can make you more desirable and more appreciated than if you were constantly available and constantly giving. Disappearing is about creating emotional space that forces the other person to reevaluate what they had, what they lost, and what they now have to do to regain it. It's not about playing games. It's about recognizing that your worth is too great to be taken for granted. By stepping away, you show that you value yourself, that you respect your own needs and boundaries, and that you will not settle for being treated as anything less than what you deserve. The true essence of masculine energy lies in the ability to be unapologetically self-sufficient. A masculine man doesn't rely on others for his happiness, emotional stability, or fulfillment. He is whole in himself, and his sense of value is not tied to the approval or presence of others. This is perhaps one of the most critical characteristics that distinguish masculine men from others. A man who is emotionally self-sufficient doesn't need to chase after relationships or validation. He is focused on his own growth, on the pursuit of his passions, and on the fulfillment of his purpose. His happiness is not dependent on someone else's actions, words, or affection. This inner strength and self-sufficiency create an aura of confidence and power that naturally draws people toward him. People are attracted to those who don't need them to feel complete. It's the most magnetic quality you can possess. The concept of emotional independence is at the heart of this self-sufficiency. A masculine man recognizes that emotions are transient, they come and go. He doesn't allow his emotional state to be dictated by the whims of others or by external circumstances. Instead, he takes ownership of his emotions, accepting them without being controlled by them. He understands that, while emotions are part of the human experience, they do not define him. He is able to experience joy, anger, sadness, and every other emotion, but he doesn't allow these emotions to control his actions or influence his behavior. This emotional maturity is the foundation of his emotional self-sufficiency. He doesn't seek out others to validate his feelings or give him emotional support. Instead, he knows how to manage his emotions on his own, ensuring that he is always in control of his mental and emotional state. This level of emotional independence is also reflected in the way he interacts with others. A masculine man doesn't need to seek constant approval from those around him. He doesn't need to be told that he's doing well or that he's worthy of love and respect. His confidence is rooted in his own understanding of his worth. This self-assuredness is not the result of ego, but of self-awareness and acceptance. He knows who he is and is at peace with himself. He doesn't seek to prove anything to others because he is already grounded in his own truth. When you are emotionally self-sufficient, you stop chasing after people who don't add value to your life. You stop trying to convince others of your worth. You simply show up as who you are, without the need for validation. And because of this, people naturally respect you more. They see that you are not desperate for their approval or affection. You stand on your own, and that independence is what makes you so attractive. Furthermore, a masculine man who is emotionally self-sufficient understands the importance of boundaries. Boundaries are a reflection of self-respect and self-awareness. When you know your worth, you have no issue setting boundaries with others. You understand that not everyone is deserving of your time, attention, or energy, and you make sure to protect your personal space. This is crucial because when you don't have clear boundaries, you open the door to being taken advantage of or manipulated. A man who knows his value doesn't tolerate disrespect, mistreatment, or any behavior that goes against his core values. He is not afraid to walk away from people or situations that no longer serve him. His emotional self-sufficiency gives him the strength to enforce these boundaries, regardless of how others may react. This doesn't mean he is cold or distant. It means he knows how to prioritize his own well-being, which allows him to show up as the best version of himself in all areas of his life. This self-sufficiency also impacts the way a man approaches relationships. He doesn't enter relationships out of neediness or fear of being alone. He doesn't chase after women or cling to relationships out of insecurity. Instead, he is emotionally stable enough to recognize when a relationship is healthy and when it is not. If he is in a relationship, it's because he genuinely wants to be there, not because he feels obligated to be. He understands that relationships should be built on mutual respect, trust, and emotional equality, not dependency. He knows that he does not need a woman to complete him. He is already complete on his own. When he enters a relationship, he does so as a whole person, not as someone looking for someone else to fix him or fulfill him. This mindset allows him to attract women who are equally self-sufficient, creating a dynamic where both partners bring their best selves to the table and support each other without becoming emotionally dependent. The ability to be emotionally self-sufficient also gives a man the power to detach when necessary. Emotional detachment is not about being cold or unfeeling. It's about recognizing when it's time to let go of something that no longer serves you. A masculine man doesn't cling to unhealthy relationships, situations, or emotions. He is able to detach from things that drain him, that are toxic, or that prevent him from growing. This detachment allows him to preserve his emotional energy and focus it on things that matter most to him. He is not afraid of being alone because he understands that solitude is necessary for growth. Being alone doesn't make him feel empty, it makes him feel whole. He knows how to enjoy his own company and use that time for self-reflection, personal development, and pursuing his goals. This emotional self-sufficiency also contributes to his resilience. Life is full of challenges, and being emotionally self-sufficient gives a man the ability to face adversity without losing his sense of self. When difficult situations arise, he doesn't rely on others to prop him up emotionally. Instead, he draws on his own inner strength to get through tough times. His sense of self-worth is not shaken by external circumstances because it is firmly rooted in his understanding of his own value. He understands that setbacks and challenges are part of life, and he faces them with the confidence that he will overcome them. This resilience is what enables him to keep moving forward, regardless of the obstacles in his path. At the core of emotional self-sufficiency is the understanding that you are responsible for your own happiness. You do not look to others to make you happy. You create your own happiness from within. This doesn't mean you don't enjoy the company of others or seek meaningful relationships. It simply means that you are not dependent on others for your sense of fulfillment. You understand that true happiness comes from aligning with your purpose, pursuing your passions, and living authentically. When you are emotionally self-sufficient, you stop chasing after external sources of happiness, and instead, you find joy in the simple act of being yourself. This inner contentment radiates outward, attracting the right people and experiences into your life without you having to chase after them. You live your life on your terms, and that is the ultimate expression of masculine power and strength. In the end, the true power of masculine energy lies in the ability to be independent, self-sufficient, and emotionally grounded. When a man no longer chases after validation, attention, or approval from others, he creates space for deeper, more meaningful connections. His confidence stems from knowing that his worth isn't dependent on anyone else's recognition, and that inner peace allows him to navigate relationships, challenges, and life itself with strength and resilience. By embodying this mindset, he not only attracts those who value him for who he truly is, but also maintains his sense of self, worth, and purpose, no matter the circumstances. Ultimately, masculine men don't chase because they understand that real power lies in the quiet confidence of knowing they are enough, exactly as they are.